Rare weekend, yet I was awoken early by a knock on the door. I peeked through the peephole in my pajamas, hoping it wasn't someone important so I could return to sleep. To my surprise, it was that scoundrel Lee standing outside. Hands in his pockets, he looked relaxed, wearing a shirt that seemed decades old. What was he doing here? I wondered, reluctantly opening the door for him. His first reaction upon seeing me was to step back, muttering, "Crazy woman." I rubbed my messy hair and grumpily urged, "Are you coming in or not?" Lee, the scoundrel, walked in, eyeing me with disdain. I glared back, snapping, "What are you looking at?" He casually sat on the couch, saying, "You could at least wear a bra before opening the door." Hearing this, I rolled my eyes and crossed my arms over my chest, pretending not to care. "Who said you could look?" Cough, cough. He coughed awkwardly, then loudly declared, "Miss Xiao, could you tidy up a bit? You're making me lose my appetite." Seeing his disgusted expression, I didn't feel like arguing further, especially since standing in front of him without a bra was indeed uncomfortable. So, after cursing him as a hypocritical jerk, I went back to my room to change, wash my face, and comb my hair. Lee Junchun, his full name, had been a presence in my life for 12 years. He was unbeatable in his skill of being a jerk. When I emerged from my room, he had already poured himself a glass of water, acting like he owned the place. "Hey, what are you here for today?" He replied matter-of-factly, "To celebrate your birthday." It took me a second to realize. I was so busy I even forgot my own birthday. Coming empty-handed to celebrate my birthday? "I've prepared a big gift for you." Lee Junchen raised an eyebrow, sparking my curiosity. I stared at him, waiting for his next words. He continued, "Marrying you." With a smirk, he crossed his legs and rested his hands on his knees, looking at me as if watching a show. "Don't you have a girlfriend?" "We broke up." "Breaking up right before my birthday just to marry me?" "Yep." Lee Junchen seems to have a fondness for saying "yep" from the very first moment I met him. It was during my freshman year in college when I first met Lee Junchen at a club gathering. Someone casually mentioned at the dinner table, "Lee Junchen and Xiao Xiao, you two seem to share the same birthday." "Really?" I couldn't believe it, so I recited my birth date. From a few seats away, Lee Junchen nodded at me, accompanied by a cheerful "yep." As soon as he spoke, everyone at the table started making noise, whether they knew us or not, marveling at our strange coincidence. We added each other on QQ and became acquainted. Since I was born 2 hours earlier than him, I forced him to call me Big Sister. Despite everyone thinking we would become lovers, we ended up being good buddies who could talk about anything. I have to admit, there was a hint of affection between Lee Junchen and me, but it wasn't strong enough to warrant being together, especially considering we were such good friends. We had to consider all the consequences if we were to break up. We kept in touch frequently, often meeting for meals, outings, and calls. Lee Junchen's name was probably the one I mentioned most often. I would analyze every girl who pursued him, telling him who was suitable and who wasn't. He would criticize my taste, insisting that the person wasn't right for me. I thanked him for his pessimism. During college, I had 2 short-lived relationships that didn't last more than 2 months combined. I blamed him, saying, "It's all your fault. You scared off my boyfriends." He pulled me into his arms, smiling mischievously. "I'll make it up to you." Before I could react, he kissed me aggressively, not gently at all, leaving me stunned. After pushing me away, he looked disgusted. "TSK, TSK, TSK, they really taught you that?" You jerk." I was so flustered I started stuttering, blaming him for being so frivolous. Then I deliberately stepped on his favorite white sneakers until they turned black. Being as carefree as he was, Lee Junchen probably meant it as a joke, so I gradually let go of that kiss. After graduation, we both stayed in the same city, but our workplaces and residences were far apart. Our communication wasn't frequent, and it was normal for either of us to take a few days to respond to non-urgent messages. But for some reason, I never felt anxious, as if I was sure Lee Junchen would never leave me. In the summer of 2012, on my 25th birthday, I arranged to celebrate with Lee Junchen. He said he'd treat me to a restaurant, but I insisted he come to my place and I'd cook. Don't forget to bring cake and ice cream when you come. I know, little miss. He sounded cheerful, yet pretended to be impatient. Turns out, he arrived early that day. I went to the morning market to buy ingredients without taking my phone, and he ended up waiting at my door for 2 hours with the cake and ice cream. When I returned, Lee Junchan was sitting there like a grumpy old man, sipping on melted ice cream. Little miss, do you know how expensive ice cream is? It's all melted. Haha, who asked you to come so early? I couldn't help but laugh, then accidentally spilled the ice cream all over him. Now I was laughing uncontrollably in the hallway, while he was howling in misery. You owe me a new outfit. After entering the house, Lee Junchan put on my camisole dress and sat on the couch playing games, swearing not to say a word to me. Lee, are you going to help me with the vegetables? If you don't, I won't buy you clothes. I'll have my mistress bring them for me. Haha, it's okay. I've already taken a picture of you wearing a dress. Hearing this, Lee Junchan jumped off the couch as if to fight me, but the dress had too little fabric, leaving him exposed. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, while he wore a scowl the whole time. I swear it was the happiest birthday I ever had, and probably the most unforgettable for Lee Junchan too. But the story doesn't end there. So much happened in just one day that it would take 10 chapters to describe. In the afternoon, we cuddled up at home watching movies, playing games, and went shopping together before having a candlelit dinner. After doing this series of activities with him, I felt soft in my heart, easily moved by the slightest touch. Especially when the room was dark, with only 2 lamps illuminating his silhouette, it would give me a sense of trance, as if the whole world revolved around him. We drank a lot of wine, kissed, touched, and the heavy breathing was enough to make me dizzy with excitement. But I was clear-headed about what I was doing with him, and my mind remained clear throughout. When Lee Junchan found out I was a virgin, he looked regretful. I held him down and told him, "Let's continue." He kept calling my name, Xiao Xiao, over and over again, and each time it reached the depths of my heart. That night, everything was a mess, utterly chaotic, and I didn't even care what would happen the next morning. It was like a reckless act of desperation. The next morning, Lee Junchan woke up before me and kept staring at me. When I opened my eyes, his enlarged face appeared in front of me. He just stared at me without saying a word. I pushed his chest, feeling confused. "What are you doing? Get up." But suddenly, Lee Junchan grabbed my hand and kissed it. "I'm sorry, Xiao Xiao. I'm really sorry. I don't remember him ever apologizing to me so seriously before. This time, it seemed like even he couldn't see it as a joke anymore. He said he was a jerk, and he didn't know I was a virgin. Oh, it's not just your fault. It takes 2 to tango. I'll take responsibility for you." No, don't. Vaguely remembering that morning, he bought breakfast again, and even voluntarily cleaned up. He was so attentive. I knew the reason for his apology was because he couldn't give me any promises. Even though he was 25, he still had a playful heart. Later, when he saw that I didn't seem to take it to heart, he casually turned the page on the matter. Occasionally, he would tease me about my figure or joke about how crazy I was that night. Listening to him say these things, I knew our friendship hadn't soured. It was a good thing it hadn't, but for some reason, I felt a slight twinge of loss in my heart. In the following year, I got a new boyfriend, and Lee Junchan also got a new girlfriend. Both relationships seemed serious, with marriage as the goal. The 4 of us went out to eat together, and for a moment, I felt like this was the best ending. But who knew that both of our relationships would end in less than 2 years? He and his girlfriend argued all the time, both tired of it, so they peacefully parted ways. As for me, my boyfriend cheated on me, and after a big fight, we went our separate ways. On our 27th birthday, Lee Junchan and I were both single again. He treated me to dinner at a revolving restaurant, spending quite a bit of money. "Can you stop thinking of me only after you break up?" I teased him about wasting money on his girlfriend. He gave me a look and said I wasn't any better, being blinded by a scumbag. "It's all your fault, bringing bad luck to me. So, how are you going to compensate me?" Asked leisurely with my legs crossed. There's a kind of friend who, no matter how much frustration and unhappiness you've experienced, as long as you chat with them and complain a bit, your mood will improve. I have to admit, Li Junchen does have this strange ability in my life. After venting to Li Junchen about being cheated on a few times, I didn't feel so upset anymore. Just like now, looking at the beautiful scenery outside the window and the expensive dishes on the table, I felt so relaxed. All the previous troubles seemed to vanish into thin air. Li Junchen poured me some wine and handed me the glass. How about I give myself to you? He lightly tapped his glass against mine, teasingly. Seeing that I didn't respond, he continued, "Hey, Xiao Xiao, I'm not joking. Oh, if we haven't found the right person by our 30th birthday, let's get married." It was a phrase often seen in novels and movies, but I never expected to hear it from Li Junchen. Are you serious? More serious than gold. Li Junchen looked at me sincerely, a glint of light reflected in his black eyes before disappearing. Okay, I agree. Who knows? Maybe by then, I'll already be married to someone else. I raised my chin provocatively. He took a sip of wine. We'll see. There was a hint of a smile on his lips. I didn't know if our promise was considered settling. Out of fear of loneliness, abandonment, or pressure to marry, we refused to bravely seek true love and instead found a stable backup plan for ourselves. Was it a compromise for me and Li Junchen? As the word compromise crossed my mind, I felt a twinge of unwillingness. Originally, I didn't want to be like this with Li Junchen. After dinner, he drove me home, wearing a smirk. Want to make plans for tonight too? Get lost. Don't be so harsh, give me a kiss. As he said this, he leaned forward, but I pushed him away without hesitation. Yet, he persisted until he finally managed to kiss me in the tightly enclosed space of the car. It was a very affectionate kiss, devoid of any lust. After the kiss, he praised me for making progress. I joked, that's because my ex-boyfriend taught me well. Li Junchen's face fell into shadow, and I couldn't see his expression. As I closed the door, his car sped away, leaving behind a trail of dust that brushed against my body. I snorted lightly. Was he really angry? Then I stood alone downstairs, feeling a bit lost. I remembered a passage I wrote in high school. I always said I wanted to find true love, but later I realized that I would rather lose true love than lose you. In that sense, are you my true love? Compared to true love, Li Junchen, it seems like you are more important to me. I sighed softly, then stretched my neck to look for Li Junchen's car, only to find it had already disappeared. All these years of my youth seemed to have vanished in the blink of an eye. Okay, let's rewind time to the present, back to this 30th birthday, where something significant happens every year. Li Junchen arrived at my house as promised, but instead of a surprise, he brought shock. I didn't expect him to come because I knew he had a girlfriend, and their relationship seemed pretty good. But they broke up. Why? Weren't things going well? I asked with concern. Her ex-boyfriend came back for her, and she chose him, Li Junchen said casually, showing no signs of sadness or regret. It was me who looked at him pitifully. You must be really upset. It's fine, actually. I don't feel much. Can you believe it? I actually feel relieved, Li Junchen said, patting his chest as if to confirm his feelings. Before I could react, he suddenly leaned in close and said, just centimeters away from me, let's go. Xiaoge, let's register for marriage. Hey, this can't be a joke. It's not a joke. We've been brewing this for 12 years, a super marathon. What, are you having second thoughts? Your credibility is at stake here. Using a bit of reverse psychology, we ended up at the Civil Affairs Bureau. On the way there, we ran into my neighbor who had praised him a few years ago, saying what a great guy he was for patiently waiting for me for hours. At that time, I felt a bit sweet and a bit blocked, similar to how I feel now. The photo on the marriage certificate turned out great. Li Junchen and I smiled perfectly, looking like a real couple. As we walked out, the sky was blue, the sun was shining brightly, and getting married, such an important event, seemed as ordinary as having a meal in my life as Xiao Xiao. It was Li Junchen who kept looking at the marriage certificate repeatedly, happily saying, from now on, our birthdays will also be our wedding anniversary. Hey, We're really saving money, bro. I emphasized to him jokingly, "Who's your bro?" "I'm your wife." And so, we bickered all the way to have dinner, went shopping, and got into bed together. But on our supposedly memorable wedding night, we couldn't stop laughing. We had bought candles, a canopy, and even played soft music, but we couldn't find the shadow of passion. "Can you stop laughing?" I said to Lee Junchan while laughing. "It's starting, don't be nervous." He suddenly jumped onto the bed, encircling me. I pretended to be calm, waiting for his next move, but unexpectedly, he got off the bed again. I raised my voice and said, "Hey, can you be serious? What are you doing?" "Don't worry, I'm just trying to give you an unforgettable night." That night was truly unforgettable. Lee Junchen didn't properly put away my clothes, but casually tossed them aside, accidentally throwing them onto the candles, causing a flame that soon spread to our canopy. I had never experienced a fire before, so the scene was truly frightening for me. Our wedding night turned into a scene from a disaster movie. Lee Junchen grabbed a basin and, looking at the chaotic bedroom, remarked, "We really played with fire." Extinguishing the fire drained our energy, and we didn't have the strength to clean up the disaster scene. So we closed the door, sprayed some air freshener in the living room, and both went to sleep in the study.
Hey, CIA.
Do you want to continue? No way, you. The news of Lee Junchen and I getting married spread inexplicably, and our friends and family were more excited than we were. They said that because of Lee Junchen and me, they believed in love again, believed in dreams, believed in time, and believed in everything. I need to clarify something. We didn't get married because of love. I married Lee Junchen because no one else wanted him, I said, causing everyone to burst into laughter. Lee Junchen chimed in, "Xiaoge, you're naughty." He had that mischievous look on his face. I admit, at that moment, I felt particularly happy. No, I should say I've been happy since we got married. After getting married, Lee Junchen continued to call me Xiaoge, and I continued to call him Jian Runli. Only occasionally would we call each other husband and wife when we felt like it. There was a funny incident related to these titles. Right after we got married, Lee Junchen forgot some documents at home and asked me to bring them to him. He instructed his intern to expect a delivery from Xiaoge. When I arrived at their company, the receptionist stopped me in my tracks.
Lee Junhen's intern stood silently beside me, scrutinizing me.
Later, when he learned that I was there to deliver documents to Lee Junchen, the intern cautiously asked me, "Are you Xiaoge, the female one?" Seeing that the intern was new and young, I didn't make a big deal out of it. Since then, whenever I visited Lee Junchen's company, that young intern would call me sister-in-law the loudest, as if trying to make up for his earlier mistake. It didn't take me long to come to terms with Lee Junchen's identity. The transition from buddies to husband and wife seemed natural. It's hard to describe this feeling. Perhaps it's the transition from being the main character in my own life to being a part of Lee Junchen's life. Shortly before the wedding, Lee Junchen had just been promoted to manager. As a new leader, he became very busy with work, and our honeymoon plans were repeatedly postponed. In the past, I wouldn't think much if Lee Junchen didn't contact me for many days. But now, if he didn't come home for 2 consecutive nights, I would feel very down. "You're not coming home tonight again?" "Yeah, it's too far, a bit of a hassle." "Miss me?" "Not coming home is fine, who would miss you?" I said these insincere words, feeling a bit melancholic. I was afraid that our marriage would become a shackle, and even more afraid of losing myself. But strangely, people often find that the more they fear something, the more likely it is to happen.
I smalla t'estranja perfumar on Lee Junchen's clutes.
I stubbornly didn't allow him to hire a female secretary, and I insisted on him telling me about every aspect of his past. I told Lee Junchen that I would unconditionally support his work, but on the other hand, I would complain that he couldn't drive over to pick me up. I said I would take care of all the housework, and he just needed to focus on providing for the family. But when he casually threw his clothes around, it would still make me extremely annoyed. I prepared a table full of food, eagerly waiting for him to come home, only to receive a text message in the end. Later, I forgot why we got married. Then suddenly, I remembered again. Lee Junchen had never said he loved me. How could I expect so much from someone who didn't love me? Finally, I had a fight with Li Junchen. I told him, "This is not the marriage life I want." "What's wrong, Xiaoge?" "Li Junchen, I don't want this at all. This version of me is so unfamiliar to me, don't you know? I'm feeling anxious every day and becoming selfish." I rambled on to Li Junchen about all my worries. He didn't seem to understand, just kept repeating, "Let's not argue. I still have a report to finish. Let's get divorced anyway. We didn't get married for love in the first place. Let's just split up and remain good buddies." After saying this, Li Junchen stood still in place, looking a bit dazed. Taking advantage of his daze, I pushed him out of the bedroom, closed the door, as if closing the door could distance all the emotions, even Li Junchen, brought by love. Li Junchen turned the doorknob a few times, then started knocking on the door again. "Xiao Xiao, what are you doing? Come out." I leaned against the door, feeling a sudden sense of desolation. Li Junchen and I had known each other for so long. We were so familiar, yet so distant since we got married. These days, I had been speculating, hesitating, indulging in concealment and confrontation, but I had never turned around and hugged him properly. "Li Junchen, I love you. I've fallen in love with you." I shouted loudly to the air, with a tone of both grievance and reluctance. There was silence from outside the door for a moment, then Li Junchen said, "I know. Open the door, let's talk." "Li Junchen, I'm proud of you, do you know that? I don't want this marriage to be unequal. The moment I fell in love with you, we were already unequal. This isn't what I want. Let's separate." As I said these words, tears flowed uncontrollably. I had cried so much that I had to tilt my head back. I couldn't tell if it was tears or mucus flooding into my throat, too busy crying to feel disgusted, only focused on crying harder and harder. "What's wrong with you? If I didn't love you, why would I marry you?" Li Junchen's cocky and domineering confession fulfilled all the fantasies I had during my teenage years. After we reconciled, I couldn't stop praising him. "You were so manly back then, Li Junchen." That day, he told me that he had fallen in love with me a long time ago, but he hadn't figured out whether he wanted to marry me yet, or rather, he wasn't sure if he could bear the responsibility of taking care of me. So, turning 30 was his deadline for himself, and also a wager on our fate. If he won, we would be blissfully happy. If he lost, there would be no turning back. Why didn't you tell me earlier then? If I had told you earlier, you wouldn't have witnessed Xiao Ji's heartfelt confession in such an unexpected way. Damn it, Li Junchen, you really can't change your nature. After saying this, I glared at him angrily, but suddenly crashed into his tender eyes. In his moist and bright eyes, there seemed to be infinite love and tolerance. In that moment, it felt like electricity was running through my whole body. I felt like a lonely island, isolated from any affection and unexpectedly embraced by Li Junchen's vast sea. "Hey, why are you acting so infatuated?" Li Junchen's abrupt voice interrupted, making me feel like stomping my foot. He was really good at ruining the mood. "Hey, shouldn't you be kissing me now? I think finishing the report is more important." He glanced at me lightly, then turned around and left. As he passed by the dressing table, he deliberately turned the mirror towards me, coincidentally reflecting my tear-streaked face. "TSK, TSK, TSK, can't even recognize yourself." Instead of getting angry, I laughed. There was so much sweetness in my heart. I felt like I was no longer Xiaoge, but Xiaomei. A woman who is loved will probably always be like a girl. It was when I was 32 years old that I received the news of pregnancy. At that time, I was facing the dilemma of whether to accept a promotion to department manager or not. Should I stay or should I go? Should I quit or should I advance? I found myself in a dilemma. I asked Li Junchen for his opinion, and he said he wouldn't pressure me in any way, leaving the decision entirely up to me. "Do you want a baby?" I asked him. He glanced at me and said, "Of course I do." I smirked and said that I wanted one too. "In that case, let's have one. If you want to continue working, I'll help you with the housework. If you want to quit, I'll support you financially." I pretended to pounce on him, acting fiercely. Why do women have to face such choices? Li Junchen then wrapped me in his arms and casually twirled my hair. How about we switch roles in the next life? All right, I'll make you give birth to a bunch of children for me. In the end, I couldn't bear to part with either the child or my career. I calculated how long I could endure both, and Li Junchen devoted all his time to taking care of me. Just when my promotion to department manager seemed certain, Li Junchen's mother had an accident. She ran a red light while driving, resulting in a serious car accident. As a result, the joyful atmosphere in our home suddenly became heavy. Li Junchen was an only child, and his mother's accident burdened us immensely. Li Junchen couldn't afford to take care of me anymore. He spent his days shuttling between the company and the hospital, spending nights at the hospital. Meanwhile, I continued working despite suffering from morning sickness, making frequent mistakes due to lack of rest. Life seemed to have plummeted from heaven to hell in an instant. On one hand, there was the job I had struggled for 10 years to achieve, now finally showing promise. On the other hand, there were my important family members. Although we often say that we can find another job, but only have one family, when it comes time to make a real choice, it's still incredibly difficult to let go. At night, I stared at the ceiling, sometimes wondering, can a woman truly balance family and career? Except for Li Junchen, almost everyone supported me quitting my job, even though it meant giving up a lucrative career I had worked hard for. The situation with my mother has improved. If you don't want to quit, then don't. Li Junchen and I stood in the hospital corridor discussing this issue. Li Junchen still looked clean and tidy, but there was still a hint of exhaustion in him that he couldn't conceal. I've made up my mind. I'll resign. I said this without a hint of hesitation, the words ringing clear in the quiet corridor. There was no other reason except that the man by my side deserved it. He deserved me bearing his child, taking care of his mother. He looked at me quietly, thoughtful, and after a while, he sighed lightly. From then on, Li Junchen's salary had to cover our mortgage, his mother's medical expenses, our living expenses, and the baby's formula. This seemingly glamorous manager was actually worn down by life's challenges. Li Junchen remained silent for a long time. Suddenly, I felt that sometimes a man could be as fragile as a child. I took a step forward, took his hand, and said softly, "It's okay. Everything will be okay." It was both a comfort and a reassurance. He leaned down and hugged me, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Xiaoge, thank you. It's so good to have you." I smiled quietly to myself, thinking, "You fool, I'll always be here for you." About half a year later, my mother-in-law recovered from her illness, and I was also about to give birth. During this time, Li Junchen and I had several small and big quarrels due to differences in opinions, but they all ended with his compromise. "Xiaoge, hurry up and give birth. I need to start a revolution to strive for our equality. Even if I'm not pregnant, we still can't be equal." At this moment, my mother-in-law intervened. "Junchen, you need to be more accommodating to Xiao Xiao." Hearing my mother-in-law's voice, I turned around and smiled at her. After more than half a year of getting along, my mother-in-law and I had established a reliable bond. She often said that having a daughter-in-law like me was her blessing, and I also found that despite our many differences in values, we were all working for the good of this family. She would try to accept Li Junchen and my ideas, and we would also understand her actions. This unique interpersonal relationship in social life has indeed helped me grow a lot. My mother-in-law's ordeal did unsettle our hearts, and Li Junchen's worries must have permeated his marrow. But he rarely brought negative emotions to me, even though he faced persistent pressure and tension. Fortunately, everything was moving in a positive direction. All these trials and tribulations would be just experiences, not the end. Sometimes I would suddenly realize that the Li Junchen beside me was no longer the playful and unserious boy he used to be. His thoughts and his state of mind had become mature and serene. We might bicker over trivial matters, but when it came to big issues, he could definitely face them with courage, and I could completely trust and rely on him. On the day of my delivery, Li Junchen insisted on being there with me. He said, "At such an important moment, I have to accompany my brother. She's afraid of the pain." I don't know if the doctor would be surprised when they heard this, but I just knew he couldn't come in the end. The pain of childbirth was indeed excruciating, but at such a moment, instead of complaining, I felt grateful. Memories of Li Junchen and I flashed through my mind, from our ignorant and inexperienced past to facing the challenges of life together. We had experienced a lot and made many decisions together. 14 years ago, I never thought of marrying him, and he never thought of marrying me either. 14 years later, the combination of Li Junchen and Xiao Xiao formed the unique us. Little Bao's first word wasn't dad or mom, but Xiaoge. When those two words came out in his tender voice, it made both me and Li Junchen laugh and cry. Later, when he started kindergarten, I kept correcting him. You should call me mom, not Xiaoge. Why? He asked. Because I'm your mom, and I'm Xiaoge to your dad. Each time he nodded thoughtfully. However, when I picked him up after work, he still called out loudly in front of many other children and parents, Xiaoge? Then he turned to the teacher and said, Teacher, Xiaoge is here. Can I go now? The teacher nodded, smiled at me, and the surrounding parents chatted with me, saying, He calls you Xiaoge, it's quite unique. Then looked at me inexplicably. Until we stepped out of the classroom door, when Li Junchen waved to me, calling out, Xiaoge. The parents who came out with us suddenly all smiled, as if everything was clear. Our affection was truly subtle and understated. From then on, we became the three of us. Li Junchen and I each held one of Little Bao's hands as we walked together on the tree-lined avenue. The child was lively, bouncing around, his small shadow moving under the sunset. So adorable. I glanced at Li Junchen. He was carefully and attentively watching Little Bao's every step, afraid he might fall. His seriousness made him particularly charming. It was the 5th year of our marriage. We thought we understood the constant challenges of life, but as for the philosophy of marriage, to me, it's simply about two people teaming up to face life, encountering and solving problems together, stumbling along the way. I don't know what difficulties or conflicts we'll encounter in the future, but I know that the three of us will always be together. If I were to say what the most precious thing my family has given me is, after much thought, it's probably the courage to face the world. Let's go. How about having Dad cook dinner tonight? Okay.